Oliver, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. A larger-than-life personality he was, famous throughout the world. But what would you say was his single biggest contribution to the fashion world in particular?
It's got to be the way that he absolutely rebranded Chanel back in the 1980s. He came on board aged 50 years old in 1983, and he was given carte blanche to do whatever he wanted in order to try and get the then quite fusty, out of fashion house, if that's an even way to describe it, back into the mainstream, back into the desirability of people and shoppers and celebrities. Back then, it really had no sort of ambition at the time. There was nobody buying the clothes. The only profitable part of Chanel in the 80s was its perfume business. And Karl Lagerfeld really did come in and change a lot of things. The tweed suits made a comeback. The two-tone shoes made a comeback. The tweed on the handbags. These iconic things that were laid down by Coco Chanel in 1910 coming back to the fore, and now Chanel is worth a $12 billion US company. So he really did turn the fortunes around at Chanel.
Well, people also talk about, of course, a legacy that he created because he was generous to a fault, and he really gave to those who didn't have.
Yes, that's right. And I was just speaking, I've just been outside of the Chanel headquarters here in Paris, and I was speaking to a lady there who has interviewed Karl lots and lots of times over the past 40 years, and she was saying he wasn't like other designers in that he didn't have the time for people, or that he thought himself too big, too famous in order to speak to people. He did give people the time of day. He was happy to mentor people, especially people who were coming into the industry, and he really did have a view of quality. I mean, if you've ever seen the show on Netflix called 7 Days Out, there's one where it features Karl Lagerfeld and the design process that goes on at Chanel, and there they would go through and maybe a 6-month period of designing a whole collection, and right at the last minute, if he wasn't happy with something, it would change. So the quality was there. He really was a man who had an eye on detail and somebody who knew exactly what the modern day consumer wanted, which is evidenced by the fact of the success that he's had not only at Chanel but also at Fendi.
Apparently, he also had a bit of a temper, shall we say, and would often make inappropriate, provocative, and even offensive statements.
Yes, definitely. And one of the most shocking ones, shall we say, is who he made those statements to. So the very women who were modelling his clothes, he took umbrage at in an interview. In the last few years, he called models obnoxious. He said that they really didn't add a lot to his business. When you think the fact that they are the people who are carrying his clothes down the runway in order for buyers to have a look at, in order for the fashion world to put on their pages, they did actually quite add a lot to his business. He also made some rather unpleasant remarks about Muslim migrants in Germany in 2015. So a character who wasn't afraid of controversy, somebody who was very, very well spoken, but a lot of the people that I've spoken to said that he was a man of great wit as well, that even though he had this dark side to him, he was compassionate and he did have some very, very strong humour about him.
So we're going to leave it for now. Oliver, our Paris correspondent, Oliver Whitfield Miocic.